I started writing when I was 9 years old. Uh, I wasn't writing uh, I wasn't writing tunes that I was creating. I used to rewrite tunes that I was hearing on the radio. I had a Caucasian later that I used to house sit for. She was about 80 some years old. And when everybody would go to town on a Saturday, this was in Columbus, Mississippi, and everybody would go to town on a Saturday, and they would call me uh, to sit with her during the day. And I really liked sitting with her because she made one of those uh, coconut and something that was really good. And then we'd have cookies and all kinds of stuff on it that day. And I used to lay on the floor. She had the radio on. I listened to the radio, and a song was popular at that time, Somewhere Over the Rainbow. And I didn't like that. The tune was okay, but I wanted to change the title. And I rewrote it, and I wrote Somewhere Over the Mountain. And I took it to her. I'm 9 years old, and she did the correct spelling, of course. And she told me I was going to be a songwriter. And then it turned out that I was a songwriter, and she used to encourage me, from the 9 years old until I left Mississippi. And I left Mississippi when I was 14 years old. All this was, I guess, was an accident because, like I said, I started writing when I was 9 years old, and I used to write it and throw it away. I had a very colorful coming up. Uh, I didn't finish high school. When I came to Chicago High, I was 14 years old, and my mother gave me a choice. I wanted to go to school or did I want to get a job. So naturally, I say I'll get a job. And I got a Social Security coming in. I got this job, and I worked this job for 10 years. The job spoiled me for every other job I ever had in my life. I was working in a factory. They made shoestrings. They had a they had a government contract where we dyed nylons for parachutes, and I think I was making something like $8 a day, but they had a bonus. The government was paying us a bonus, $100 a month every man that worked on this project with those. So I had a nice check. I used to get paid every 2 weeks. Ooh, I had a big check, so I was really carried away with that. That was my first job, and I was writing then, but I didn't keep it. So I left Chicago Heights, and I went to New York, and I went to New York. Uh, my intention was I was going to go to journalism school there, but I got there, and I finally got a job in the garment district. But I never did get around to going to school, and I stayed in New York a year, and then I came back to Chicago Heights, and then I hitchhiked to California, to Los Angeles. But I'm still writing. Songwriting to me is a calling. Believe me, it's a calling. I find myself, like, I sit down and serious songs or decent songs, and I use words that I don't necessarily use in conversation, in general conversation. So that's why I know that, because I know there's got to be a calling, because it's a spirit. I mean, songwriting. It's like I say, it's a calling. At least 75% of it is from personal experiences. Like I wrote a tune, Hattie Mae, Artie Blues Boy, recorded, and I didn't really write the tune until up in the '80s, but I had the tune from the time when I was doing the time I was 9 years old, and it was dedicated. I dedicated the song to my brother, he passed on. But what happened? They used to have, some people pronounce it as juke, but it's really pronounced as juke. Okay, we used to have jukes on Fridays and Saturday nights. Okay, and my grandfather had a pool, and the house where this music was coming from was at least 2 or 3 miles from, and that you know that music hitting on that water, and my brother he was younger than me, and he'd wake me up, you know, on Saturday night, and we would sneak out the house, you know, and crawl over there, but because this was, you know, previously they were having be frying fish, and bootleg whiskey, and all that, and we crawl up over there and look through the cracks in the floor and watch them dance, and all, you know. And then, and the title of the tune is "Hattie Mae." Meet me at Hattie Mae, and I wrote that because from our experience from that. And so, like I say, at least 75% of the stuff I write are probably personal experiences. You know, like I wrote Cicero recorded this song. The title of the song is "Your Wife is Cheating on Us." Okay, and how I come up with that title, I was about 22 years old, and I had family I knew them. They came up from Mississippi, but they came from Hollandale, Mississippi. Well, I was from Columbus. I'd never been to Hollandale in my life, but I went not then. But I went later on. Went to Hollandale with this guy's name was Thomas Bellamy. Willie Walker was also a friend of the Bellamy family. So when Willie came to Chicago Heights, I got him a job and became friends, and he moved in with another dude that he knew. And this dude brought his wife from Mississippi, okay? So Willie started going with his wife. He's staying in the house with, and his wife had some people in Kankakee, and she used to go to Kankakee every weekend. So Willie didn't like this. Now he's the guy that's going. So he went to the husband and said, "Hey, man, you need to stop. You need to stop going to Kankakee every weekend." Say, she probably got a man down there. Say, if you scared to whoop her, I'll whoop her for you. And I wrote because on the end in that verse I said the reason that I'm worried about it because she might want me too. And that's where I wrote that tune from. Most of the time, I have a melody, you know, in my head, but I have to get with a musician, you know, that understands music now. And I've had, you know, 3 or 4 guys here in Chicago that I could sit down with and could sing, and they know where I'm coming from as far as the melody, and put it together that way. I don't hear an orchestration. I can hear the rhythm section, you know, the guitar, the drum, and so forth, whatever what I want to. But you know, I hear space for the horns, but I don't know how I want them to go. I developed my own style from that, you know. See, you notice that the traditional blues is it repeats the first line, but I write 4 lines. My blues is 4 lines, you know, and the verse tells is the story, and all of my verses, usually 4 verses tells my story. Some songs I've had a little longer, but each verse is saying something about what the other one is till I come to a climax. I got to start a meeting, telling the story, and then I got to finish, you know. So that was my style of the blues. Blues, they wasn't doing it like that. They used to do that. Must my mule kick me down? Yeah, yeah. Must my mule kick me down? I don't do that. If I tell you about the mule kicking down, I'll tell you why he's a mule, or what he got a bug in himself, or something that made him kick you down, you know. But I told the story. Became friends with Oddie Blues Boy White in 1967. Okay. It was a joint in Chicago, Rudy Howard's place on Halsted. I can't think of that. Bonanza. And I met out in Bonanza because I was coming out of, you know, I spent a lot of time in Chicago, off and on in Chicago anyway. And I met Oddie. And Oddie and I had something in common because he was a friend of Little Milton. Well, I had met Little Milton in East St. Louis in 1955, and this was, like I say, 67. But I hadn't seen Milton since then because, you know, I was in the Navy. I spent some time down in Kansas City, and finally I came back to Chicago. Came back to Chicago in 1949, and like I said, I cut into Milton in '67, or he cut into me, and we became friends, and you know, and well, Milton. After he got back, I met up with Milton again, but I met out in '67, and I road manager. I was his road manager. Uh, he decided. He tells a story about meeting some guy that offered him $10,000 to record the blues. I don't know if that's true or not. But that's one of his things. But I do know that I had I wrote a tune. Nobody knew. You know, I was running with Tyrone Davis, Lee Shot Williams, Bobby Jones. All those cats were my friend. Uh, Johnny Taylor, but nobody knew I was a writer because I didn't tell them. Okay, so I had this session, and 9 o'clock in the morning we coming to rehearsal. He was getting ready, and he wanted a drink of whiskey. 9 o'clock. So I left my tablet on a chair with the producer. You know, they getting ready to sit, they get in the studio and stuff. And I had this tablet with me, and I left the tablet and my recorder. So I don't know if they could get the recorder on. I'd written this tune, "You Are My Leaning Tree," aka Leaning Tree. So when we got back, I didn't want me to walk to the liquor store with him. I went to the liquor store with him. When we come back, this guy asked me, "Hey, who tablet is this?" So who name's on it? He said, "Your name on it." I said, "Well, then it's my tablet." He said, "Well, what you gonna do with this tune?" I said, "Which one?" You Are My Leaning Tree. So I ain't gonna do nothing with it. Doing what it's gonna do, lay there in that chair. He said, "No, we got to record this." I said, "Well, okay." He said, how you think it go?" I had never been in the studio in my life, and I started singing how I thought it went, you know. And they put it in one of the biggest records that Audio ever had, really. And that was an accident. That was my first published tune, and from that tune up until now, I've published over 200 tunes. I got over 200 tunes recorded out here. So, you know, by me knowing the entertainers and buddy with them, you know, it was hard and it wasn't hard because Adi did, you know, I did a couple of albums with Adi. Then I did, I think 3 or 4 albums with Cicero Blake. Then I did some tunes with Ruthie Andrews. And you know, then Willie Clayton come along. I road managed with Willie. You know, I got Willie his first record deal. You know, with Ichiban Records. That was that 3 people sleeping in my bed. But that was not Willie's biggest record. His biggest record was a tune that I wrote, "Equal Opportunity." That was one of his biggest seller up to now. I used to hear the guys sit up, you know, all the guys that sit up, you know, when they wasn't, you know, all the guys when they wasn't working and they wasn't doing anything. We was hanging in certain joints, and I would hear the same conversation over and over and over. And you know, and nobody never could. And it was the same conversation, like I said. It was definitely redundant. I started looking for books. I got a library, small library in there, and I got books all over the house. Got them some upstairs and back there. So I started reading. Okay, you know, that's how I taught myself about publishing. And so, because I started reading, and you definitely need to read or need to know something about the business, and you need to know something concrete about the business, not what somebody tell you. Because if you know how, you can find it. You can go in the library and find it. And once you make one hookup, how the so research is concerned, you can make others. And that's uh, I studied music theory uh, at Olive Harvey for one semester, but I didn't graduate. Matter of fact, I didn't do the whole semester because I didn't get a GED until 1989. But I still, before that, I was I, I used to go into a public library because I always knew, like I said, that first job I had spoiled me for a job. So I was never satisfied with just a manual label job. I knew it was more to me, that I had more in me than just that. My writing, the record companies started paying him attention. So he got a deal with John Abbey, who owned Ichiban, was appointed by the banks in Louisiana to Stan Lewis Company, Jewel Paula, because Jewel Paula had went into bankruptcy, and they got John Abbey to to bring this company out of bankruptcy. Okay, well when they brought the company out of bankruptcy, there's one artist that he wanted, and that was Adi, and he wanted Adi because of the song. The album that he did with that sold so well with Stan Lewis, he said, okay, he'll take Adi. So he took out Adi. Adi did about 5, 6 albums with him. I was on all those albums. Then Adi went to Malaco. I did a couple of tunes with Malaco. We never did really, and I did my own publishing deal with Malaco at one time. So no, I learned it myself, really.